I'm Tony Ruiz, contributing editor at Gold Derby, here with Misan Harriman, who is the director of The After, a short film that has been shortlisted at the upcoming Academy Awards. And Misan, I actually, before we even talk about the film, your background is really as a photographer, and you were self-taught as a photographer. And so I'm curious what that transition has been like going from photography to filmmaking.
Well, it's been from the outside looking in super fast because my Vogue cover that changed my life was in 2020, you know, and most pictures that people have seen by me have been in the last 3 years. But I have been obsessed with cinema from as early as I can remember. It was my safe harbor at school. In the days we had video clubs and Blockbuster, I was a kid that went with my housemaster to pick films, and I was curating already. For certain kids or certain dorms, I would they would want a bit of, I don't know, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Some other people would want a bit of Lost Boys or Stand By Me, and I felt that I was a kid in sort of the halcyon days of really high quality um filmmaking. That was, I mean, if you watch Lost Boys today, it's still incredibly entertaining. And I believe my obsession with cinema was born out of that. I gave a talk as a 9-year-old about the lighting in Kubrick's Barry Lyndon. So I've and rest in peace, Ryan O'Neill, who we've just lost. But I I I've been obsessed with cinema my whole life. I just managed to pick up the tools a lot later in life, which is possibly why the transition, as you asked, from photography to filmmaking, felt like I was living my life in full fidelity for the first time.
That's so interesting. And so what was it about this particular script, this particular project that you decided this was where you were going to have your starting point?
Well, I like many of us, I had serious mental health challenges in 2020. The world went upside down with COVID. I had my second child as the world was sort of. I felt like I was bringing my daughter into an actual zombie apocalypse. It was wild when my little one was born, and then of course George Floyd was killed, and a lot of people were unpacking a lot of trauma that we didn't even know what was living inside of us, all at the same time. So I thought, if I'm going to the moving image, I need to make something that will accompany all of us in understanding that it's okay to not be okay, in recognizing our vulnerabilities, and also as a father of two little girls, um, showing the celestial nature of children. I think they're as good as we get as far as Homo sapiens are concerned, and I wanted to put that on screen as well.
And I know exactly the point of the film where I feel like that comes through the most thrillingly and chillingly at the same time. But this particular for people who haven't seen this film, this is a film about grief. This is a film about loss and coping with it and the damage that it does in the central character played by David Oyelowo. David is a very, very experienced actor and a very great actor. And so coming into this world of filmmaking, were you at all intimidated that, kind of your first leading man, so to speak, would be, somebody of that caliber?
One of the great actors of our time. Listen, I DM'd him on Instagram thinking he would never look at it, and he doesn't look at his DMs. And something happened that day that he did, and he was already a fan of my photography. And we have such similar lived experiences, British Nigerian men, not too dissimilar in age. And it felt like, and I don't want to get too spiritual here, but it felt like we knew each other long before we ever met. So if anything, there was no intimidation. There was a sense of safety, both for me, and I'll speak for David in saying that both for him as well. We knew that if we did this waltz of creativity together, that it could possibly be lightning in a bottle.
Of course, the inciting kind of incident of this film is this really horrible attack.
Mm.
um and I thought it was so brilliantly shot because it is so harrowing and brutal. It doesn't shy away from it.
Mm.
Was there ever any a temptation to maybe not show it as directly as you did?
Well, you listen, kudos to Netflix for letting me go to that place. I don't know many streamers or even major production companies that would have been brave enough to allow me to put what I just, what you just watched on screen for many reasons. But we storyboarded it. I worked with the DOP hard and the stunt coordinator, and I wanted it to be shaky and handheld and frantic, but also compositionally I knew exactly where the camera needed to be behind the shoulder for it, for an awful act of violence not to look gratuitous, but just to allow the audience to know that the worst has happened and have them lose their breath. And I hope we were able to achieve that.
Well, as a parent myself, I can tell you that yes, yes, that happened. um, you know, grief is oftentimes such a difficult thing to put on screen because it can be seen as too bleak, or it could be seen as too uh, through rose-colored glasses. It could veer into melodrama. So, what kind of you and David and the entire team what kind of discussions did you have about how to walk that line?
Well, I think so many of us are still licking our internal wounds since 2020. I mean, all of it, it's the only time, at least in my lifetime, where everyone has been affected by, you can call it an act of God or whatever, but COVID changed everyone's movements, and some people lost people. It was crazy. And to happen at that kind of scale, it's amazing because everyone on set had their own story. All of the collaborators or producing partner, everyone had their own story. And of course, David had recent grief because he's lost both his parents, but his father quite recently. And I'm not sure what we see on the screen is even acting, if I'm being honest about David. I think of performances by singers where you think, my God, they're giving too much. And I have to say that I've said this in another interview where I just hope we deserve to be a custodian of his truth. It's remarkable what he put on screen. And grief, you're right, it's hard to get it right. What I would say is that I wanted it to be uncomfortable enough to crack you open, but not to smash you in the face with how you should deal with it. If you watch this film, it's really to say that if you're in a dark place, we will let you know there's a door. We will let you know there's a door, and we hope one day you'll be able to find it. And that's the thing. It's a journey. It's about how do you build yourself back up brick by brick, and hopefully that will lead people into a place of light.
Well, and you've alluded to it twice, but I feel like the door in this case, and your reference earlier to children being the best of us, is just that little girl at the
Mm.
end hugging him. I mean, it was such a simple gesture that did so much.
Mm. Mm. I mean, look, my first daughter was premature. I first met her in a cubicle, about this big, and I learned to become a great photographer by hiding behind the lens because I was so scared of being in charge of something so precious. But as she's got bigger, I'm sure as a father you'll agree that these little people teach us more than we could ever teach them if we listen. You see, life hasn't got a hold of them yet, and there is not just a pureness, but there's a real sense of fidelity on how to take a bite out of life that children have, that I think we need to observe as adults and never lose that part of ourselves. The child at the end with the hug, her parents didn't see her. She was unseen by her parents, yet she saw this man that needed connection. And I've personally experienced children do that to people when everyone else in the room doesn't see it. A child sees someone when they need it most. And I wanted to put that in there. And also, I think a lot of people may also think there's a connection with David's Dayo, the character's own child, which I've left open to interpretation.
Well, and you mentioned the parents. That whole entire sequence walks this line between trauma and comedy. There's like anxiety, there's discomfort, but I I laughed a little bit. I had this like uncomfortable sense of laughter during that sequence. Was that
Well,
intentional?
a lot of my New Yorker friends are like, yeah, would definitely would I look they you know, like friends, real friends. They've called me up saying, listen, in New York, yeah, we would leave that dude on the ground. I'm sorry, like he can work it out himself. I have some other friends because my wife is Swedish from like Scandinavia. Say, oh my God, how could anyone leave a man crying on the ground? I was like, have you lived in a metropolitan city? Have you lived in Paris or London before? I mean, it's tragic, and I did a lot of walking around and observing, and in big cities, we're programmed to just focus on ourselves and our family, and anything else you just kind of you step over or walk away from or clutch your handbag. And I wanted to pour that in, so when he is broken on the floor and they go into their multi-million-dollar property, unfortunately, that's more realistic than we would like to take in. And even in California, I mean, there are all sorts of stories. You saw the guy in, was it San Francisco, hosing down the homeless person. I mean, we are here. This is not like we're here. It's happening now.
Well, I mean, even when they're in the car and they're just bickering back and forth, how much of that was improvised and how much of that was scripted?
You're good, man, because almost all of that was improvised. So I was on a low loader, and there are pillars from the script there, but I was throwing a few ideas and then letting Ellen and Sule, who are great actors in their own right, of course, just have fun. And influencer culture was going into it, and they're complaining about likes and everything else. And again, unfortunately, you sit in an airport lobby or just go on the Twitter page, what's it called, overheard in LA, and you hear these things all the time. So I wanted to pour that in again, because again, it brings a level of realism into it, and the ridiculous is also part of our daily comings and goings.
So, with this film and the attention that it's getting, particularly in terms of being on the short list of the Oscars, I mean, how does that hit you as a filmmaker? Are you able yet to digest it?
No. First time filmmaker. Honestly, the primary thing, well, two things, is to do something that maybe will help people heal, and secondly, not embarrass my existence. Because my first time on a movie set was day one as a filmmaker. My first time on a movie set was day one of shooting this. I have no experience as a director, and luckily I have a great producer and in Nikki Bentham, and of course David, JJ, the brilliant writer, and Cybelle, Simon Rook, the DOP, first AD, just amazing people. But it was my first time, and I just wanted to make something that was me, and not something that I felt the industry would have expected from me. And the awards, this whole journey, honestly, I can't, I can't pretend I can even believe what's going on. When we got shortlisted last week, I just couldn't believe it. And if you look at some of the names in the shorts category, you've got Amadova, who I literally worship, and
Me
Wes
too.
Anderson, well, and then these are not small names, and I can't believe I'm anywhere near any of those people in regards to any sort of awards conversation. So I'm just deeply honored and humbled.
Does it give you a sense of does it boost your confidence in going forward? Do you look forward to exploring filmmaking more?
I think as someone that struggles with self-doubt and imposter syndrome daily, I don't have that sense of confidence. And it's important I say this, and I keep saying this when I give talks at universities and even in prisons. I give talks, and I let people know that, listen, whatever accolades I've got, I'm still figuring shit out, and I'm still scared, and it's still unsure, and maybe it's in that place of self-doubt that you can carve the best version of your creative self. So in many ways, I I use it, to find my truth as a storyteller. And if you ever see me doing an interview in the future saying that I have all the answers and I know exactly what's what, then feel free to call me a plonker, because that's just not the truth. And I don't think that's ever going to change. But what I do know is that I do look for a level of emotional resonance that I want to be in all my films. I doubt I'm going to be doing comedy anytime soon. But I feel film at its best can make you unable to defend yourself against the parts of yourself that you've been running away from. And if I can make a body of work, whether it's my photography and or film, that does that repeatedly to a broad range of people, I'll be incredibly happy, regardless of awards. If I can reach people and have them get to that emotional place that sometimes their daily life doesn't allow them to get into, I think that would be really, really special.
Well, not to boost your ego, but I have over the years learned that people who are very good at portraying tragedy often can be just as skilled as portraying comedy.
Well, woo, gosh, I'm certainly see my imposter syndrome. I need a few years before I go down the comedy route, but you never know. You never know. I love comedy, I really do, but I've always felt that it's a very particular skill.
Well, Misan, congratulations! Such a great debut, and best of luck coming up. Everybody, go to goldderby.com, make your predictions for the upcoming award season, and stay tuned for interviews with more contenders in the coming weeks. Misan Harriman, a great pleasure. Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you for making the time. Take care, sir.